colleague of mine. He came out of a major operation, life-threatening operation. The first thing he did when he was in the recovery room is not think, am I okay? Did the operation go well? It's like, is the voice still there? Is my voice all right? That's the connection we have with our voices.
Our Bay Area innovator today is one of the world's most celebrated opera singers, Frederica von Stade. A Chevalier, which is France's highest honor for the arts. She's twice the winner of a Grand Prix de Disque and nominated 9 times for a Grammy Award.
When you are completely coordinated in your voice and everything, it is fantastic. I think if I actually open my arms, I might be able to fly.
She's widely regarded as the preeminent lyric mezzo-soprano of her generation. She recorded over 60 albums and performed numerous times at the White House.
When I sang for President Reagan, my name wasn't on the list. Went right through to Mrs. Reagan, and she said, "Oh yes, of course, let her in, let her in."
How does someone with no early ties to music rise to the top of the opera world? What challenges did she face, and what can the rest of us learn from her journey? Today we sit down with Flica to find out. This is Bay Area Innovators, and I'm your host, Steve Ispas. Flica, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'd like to start with your career. You didn't grow up in a family of musicians, and you started relatively late. Tell us about how you got into opera singing.
Oh, I got into opera late, but I sang from the time I was born, probably. I was always inviting my family to come in and hear me sing something and watch me perform. But it wasn't till I had formal training when I was a teenager with a wonderful teacher in the Catholic school that I went to. And then instead of going to college, I lived in Paris for a year. I was a nanny and a secretary, and then when I came back, I always was singing, and I sang in productions in New Haven and a little bit around, and finally got the idea to go to a music college named the Mannes College of Music. And there I studied with one of the first angels in my life, Sebastian Engelberg, and I started doing all the productions at the college. And he said, "You should enter the Metropolitan Opera auditions." So with his advice, I entered, and to my amazement, won a prize, and then a year later got a contract to sing at the Met. So the thrust of many careers is good fortune. The talent has to be there, and the willpower, and the drive, and the work. But there's a huge factor, which is luck. And I was in the right place at the right time. And so I really started my professional career at the Met.
Were you ever afraid to go on stage?
Oh, yes. Oh.
How did you overcome?
Oh, you just, the worst part is the 5 minutes before, when you're backstage. And then once you're out there, you're basically doing what you were trained to do.
Because you're not really trained for the 5 minutes before going on stage.
No, that's up to you. But you've learned your music. You know what you're supposed to do on stage, and then from there it's elation, with a fair amount of worry at the same time. Singers, we all talk about having these judges that sit on our shoulder and are saying, "Oh, that's flat. Oh no, that's sharp. Oh, that sounded awful. Oh, and they're going." And so our job is to silence them and put all our focus on what we're doing and what message we want to give. Because the wonderful thing about song and opera is we have stories to tell. And the more you concentrate on the story, the happier you will be. And then that's our job. That's what we are meant to give to the public. So then if we are doing that, we are doing our job.
And it's like acting in many ways, right? Depending on the role.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. Completely. You try with all your might to become the person you're portraying. And we have the benefit of words, which other musicians do not have. We have words and story and action to help us make you all in the public understand and feel what we're feeling.
I'm going to ask you about your performances and favorite roles, but first, did you have moments when you were down and then you felt like you can't do it anymore? And how did you come out of it?
Oh, yes. Not many where I mean, I've been down a lot and very worried about, am I on the right path? Because the voice is an instrument inside you, and it uses your lungs and your breath and your, the muscles, the lower muscles to support. It's an ever-changing instrument. It's like having an oboe that's a new oboe every day. So we're dealing with that, and things affect it. Fatigue affects it, dryness affects it, weather affects your voice, to say nothing of emotion and sorrow or grief or joy. All of that are part of it. So just like life, that's never going to be in perfect sync, never going to be a perfect coordination. And most things aren't perfect. And it's that striving that makes us keep doing it and keep trying and keep learning and keep on progressing.
So your voice, for an opera singer, the voice is the most important thing.
It is, yeah.
Do you worry about losing your voice, and how do you protect it?
Of course.
To make sure
oh, wonderful question. Yes, you're always worried about losing it because it's part of you. There's a wonderful little story about a colleague of mine who has been gone for many years. His name is Thomas Stewart, and he came out of a major operation. I mean, life-threatening operation. And the first thing he did when he was in the recovery room is not think, am I okay? Did the operation go well? It was like, is the voice still there? Is my voice all right? That's the connection we have with our voices. So when they're not functioning properly, which that happens a lot, you get colds or you get a cough or COVID, you are dealing with that. And you to keep your voice happy and healthy, there's a lot you have to do. You don't smoke, drink as little as possible, hydrate all the time, water, warm water, lemon. There are all sorts of remedies that all of us have. Rest is major, because just like the rest of your body, if you're a ballerina, you have to be sure your legs can do what you're asking them to do. And it's the same with the voice. You're asking it to do flips. Go fast, go slow, sing high, sing low, get the words across. Take a long, long phrase that uses up a lot of breath along the way, and you have to keep going until the very end of it. Plus the mental ability to remember the words, what this is soft, this is loud, this is mezzo forte, there's a lot going on all the time in the brain.
Now let's talk about some of your roles, and what would you say are some of your favorite parts?
Well,
that you've done?
my most favorite part is Cherubino, because I started my career with it. I sang it way beyond the age of when I should have sung it, because he's a 14, 15-year-old boy.
And just for audience, this is Mozart, Marriage of Figaro.
This is the Marriage of Figaro, and the character is Cherubino, and Cherubino is a page in a court. And he's a typical teenager. He's always thinking of love and passion, and sometimes he's happy, sometimes he's sad. He's got all the energy, emotions, and psychic instability of a teenager. I remember reading an article in the New York Times once that said that teenage boys especially, forgive me, Steve, from the age of like 15 to 22 are actually clinically insane. So I've played a number of roles of boys that age, and it's fun to try and deal with that, especially as a woman, you know. And
Yes.
I think the composers intentionally gave the role to a woman because they loved the ambiguity, but also a 15-year-old boy wouldn't have the training
Yes.
necessary to sing the music. And if you got an older person, it loses the whole flavor.
What I personally admire probably the most about artists is their love and passion for art, and in this case for music.
Right.
Can you share what that means to you and what music has given back to you?
With such joy will I share that with you, because I am on the board of a fabulous organization called Young Musicians Choral Orchestra, and I've been on the board for 20 years. And it is a program that was started at Cal Berkeley, and it was to offer music to children, especially children who would never be, their families would never be able to afford private lessons. And it's now called, we've changed the name in the past years, and it targets children from 8 to 18. And it's based on a magic triangle of musicianship, citizenship, and grades. And my experience of watching what music does for kids now for the last 20 years just is as exciting as anything I've ever known in my own career. I've seen kids, one of the main focuses of the program is to get these kids into college. So that's why we insist on a certain grade average. And every graduate goes to university. Some to Yale, some to Brown, some to Juilliard, all over, all the California schools. And the program and music changes their lives. Because when a child comes to music early, they don't know how hard it is. It's like playing tennis or riding a bike or anything. It takes time. Reading is really hard when you think of it. I have a friend who learned to read in their 20s, and it's difficult. It takes years. But you achieve something, and the process is the same process of learning. It's what you can't do on Monday, you can do on Friday if you practice it 20 minutes a day. And that's a fabulous life lesson. Plus, we really stress citizenship. We ask our kids to be kind, to be dignified, to present. Part of our work is presenting them as fine young people. They stand for something, and it's just been extraordinary. And I think that's how I came to music. My mom had music playing all the time. It was Broadway, it was opera, it was everything. And I just fell in love with it at 7 and sang in choirs at school, and she took me to the opera at different times. And I just was fascinated by it and thrilled by it. And the thought of many children not even having that experience ever, as we diminish music in public schools and wipe out art programs and take away a lifeline for many people. Not everybody is meant to be a mathematician or a scientist or a politician.
Yes, yes.
You know, so that's how I fell in love with it. It was a Victrola in those days. That's how old I am. I'd put on records the minute I got home from school. And that hearing and that interest just fueled me for my life, and the thought that there are many kids who don't have that at all in their lives.
Sounds like a wonderful experience, and I think something our audience can look into it.
Oh,
I often
yes.
listen to music, and it's such a healing
It
process.
is totally healing, and it's kids are so distracted now. I'm in the middle of a very interesting book called The Anxious Generation, and it's about what social media is doing to kids.
Yes.
Affecting teenagers the most right now, but putting a iPad in the hands of a 5-year-old, it's stimulating, but not all in the right ways, you know. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting, and a very big battle for parents to commit themselves to for children now.
Yes.
And they lose playtime.
Yes.
And communication. You know, you come, I pick up our kids. I saw them yesterday. We had a performance of our YMCO kids, and the minute they get out on the street, all of them have their iPhones out, you know.
It's an uphill battle, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
it is an uphill battle.
Now, going back to your performances, La Vie en Rose, La Vie
Yes.
en Rose,
Yes.
it's another one of your signature pieces. Can you tell us about it and maybe
Well,
sing a little bit?
you know, I lived in France for many years. I didn't go to college right away. I went and lived in France. And then when my girls were babies, we lived in France for 5 or 6 years. And so I really love France because of that experience of being there. You know, in the 60s, I was in Paris when Kennedy was killed. And I cannot tell you of all the people in my neighborhood where I lived who came up to me on the street and said, "We're so sorry," because they knew I was American. I'm passionate about French. I love the language, I love the people, I love the architecture, I love the countryside, I love the food, I love the decor. It just hit a chord in me.
And of course, you got the highest honor from the French government
Yes,
as a chevalier.
I know,
which
and
is-
I'm so honored, and I was able to meet with Giscard d'Estaing, who was president in, I guess, in the 70s. I went to the Élysée Palace, and we had breakfast together, which was so special. And my baby was just 3 months old, my little one, and so you can never depend on taxis in Paris. So I took the metro, the subway, to get to the Élysée Palace, and he must have known, because he said when it was time to leave, he said, "May I send you home in one of our cars?" So I got a deluxe ride back to my house.
So you met with the French president?
Yes, we had this funny thing of who picks up their orange juice first, because he is president, but I'm a woman, so it was kind of, you know, "Non, s'il vous plaît, Monsieur le Président, prends ton jus d'orange." Yeah, and he was charming. His daughter, why I was there was he loved opera, and his daughter loved to sing and loved opera.
That's fantastic. Can you sing for us a little bit of
I'll
the-
sing La Vie en Rose a little bit, just a
Yes.
little bit. Quand il me prend dans ses bras, il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, et ça me fait quelque chose. Il est entré dans mon cœur une part de bonheur dont je connais la cause. C'est lui pour moi, moi pour lui dans la vie. Il me l'a dit, m'a juré pour la vie. Et dès que je l'aperçois, alors je sens en moi la vie en rose.
Thank you so much for that.
You're
I
welcome.
felt like I was in Paris for a few seconds
thank
there.
you. Well, it's a wonderful, I grew up a lot with Edith Piaf as well, who I adored, and I love, many of the French singers that I also had. One of the reasons I love France and love French is because in high school, we had in the school that I went to this amazing teacher. Part of our homework every night was to read at least 25 pages of either Lamartine or Voltaire or Saint-Exupéry, and we were not allowed to use a dictionary. We had to, with the knowledge we had of the language, we had to sort of use our minds to imagine what it meant. And we'd had 2 years of French by the time we did this. And she never spoke English, and she was French. And I arrived in Paris the next year, and within 2 or 3 weeks, I was totally comfortable speaking French.
Yes,
That's how great her training was.
from my personal experience, that's the best way to learn a language, to be completely immersed, have no
Right.
choice.
And
You have
and
to
you're speaking
force
all
yourself.
day long.
Yes.
For the students, if I ever do master classes, which I do fairly often, I send them to this little video, and it's called A Little French Girl Tells a Story. And she's maybe 4 or 5, and she has bangs and straight black hair, and she's telling a story to her mother, who's encouraging her. And she says, oui, et maman, après, il y avait l'éléphant, et l'éléphant voulait manger des singes. The elephant wanted to eat the monkeys. And she said, non, c'est pas vrai, oui, oui. Et puis, après, il y avait le hippopotame qui était venu, et l'hippopotame, il était encore dans l'eau. And French children overpronounce in a way. L'hippopotame, it's very, because they're learning, it's very exaggerated. And I say you will learn everything you need to know about French by listening to children speak it.
Yes.
Yes. And I had that experience because one of my jobs when I lived in Paris was taking care of 3 children who were 5, 7, and 8. François, Antoine, and Hélène. And I just adored them. 2 of them are now judges in Paris.
What was your most favorite venue that you performed in?
The Metropolitan Opera.
It was.
Yes,
Very
I was
nice.
there the most in the beginning of my career. I loved every inch of the house. I loved it, even though it was a very big, big house. I just adored it. And it was as much, the architecture is great and everything, but it was the people. And for every singer that is on stage, every single one, there are 10 people behind them getting them there. There's the voice teacher, there's the coach, there's the pianist, there's the conductor, there's the the director, there is the costume lady, there is the wig lady, there is the makeup man, there are all the stage hands.
What is it like to perform in La Scala in Milan?
Wonderful, just wonderful.
Compared to us, the European audience versus the American audience.
Well, in some regards, the European audience is a bit more informed. They've grown up with opera for far longer than we have.
Well, they have a longer history.
A longer history, and it's part of everybody's life to go to the opera and to go to symphony. And it's affordable, much more affordable than here. It's virtually impossible now, because it costs so much to put on opera, but the tickets even Broadway tickets now are just ridiculous. Not ridiculous, they're necessary, but
Yes.
prohibitive. It's thrilling. It's just thrilling. First of all, you're at La Scala, and I believe that all the voices that have sung at La Scala, they're all in the walls. They're in the dressing rooms, they're in the orchestra pit, they're in the hall, they're on stage. All the voices are there. And that's extraordinary to walk into a house like that.
Yes, yes. Next, I want to ask you about if you sense a spiritual connection when you sing, or I have friends who told me that composers who would say like they almost feel like there's a divine connection when they compose the music that's having them, helping them compose.
I think there is. I mean, I'm a great friend of Jake Heggie, who is one of our most important young composers with successes all around the world. And Jake has told me that every once in a while he feels this, spirit. I certainly feel it. I would like to feel it even more, because singing is spiritual. It's, it began in church. The oldest singing is from church. It's a Gregorian chant, and that is very much what it was. It was to praise, to pray, to beg, to apologize, to atone. It was all these things. So I think it is, its whole process is spiritual. I have felt it most of the time singing Mahler, Gustav Mahler, because his music just really speaks to me. So it resonates in my head and heart and soul. And so many times when I've sung Mahler, there'll be a phrase and I'll think, I think I'm in heaven. I really think I'm in heaven. I think if I actually open my arms, I might be able to fly. I didn't try it, but
your friendship or relationship with Luciano Pavarotti, you met him.
Yes.
Please tell us about your experience.
Well, I don't have many experiences, but all of them are so happy. I played his son in an opera called Idomeneo, and I played the part of Idamante. And in Idomeneo is asked to sacrifice his son. So I actually lay on a bench waiting to have my head chopped off by Luciano. And he stopped mercifully before he completes the act. But I wish most people in the audience who go to operas could know what it's like to rehearse and then be on stage with your colleagues. It is a rapport and a joy that is almost unimaginable. I think teams like football teams, basketball teams, soccer teams have a sense of it. Yes, there's a tinge of competition, but mainly it's this joyful interchange. And singers, because we're basing our whole careers on this little teeny grizzle in here, are very vulnerable people, very vulnerable, and maybe a little bit crazy. So we have a really good time together. I mean, a really wonderful, happy time. It's the happiest time of a production. And then it gets a little sad when
you actually
we perform it, and then we have 2 days off before the next performance. What am I going to do without my friends? And I felt that way about Luciano. And I can remember we'd all eat at we'd go to a restaurant and eat at a big table, and Luciano was also helping himself to everybody's meal. And then the last time I saw him, he was performing in Los Angeles. And I went afterwards to see him and gave him a big hug. And he was just absolutely wonderful. And that voice just takes you to places that I've never been before in my life. The excitement, the thrill, the drama, the power, the conviction, the generosity.
We'll play a clip of him in a second, and I'll ask you to comment on it. But before then, tell us more about the rapport between performers before? Is it are you chatting? Are you discussing? Are you singing? What it's like?
Telling jokes, telling terrible jokes, playing, you know, in a rehearsal, holding a door closed that someone's meant to exit through, and seeing what they do. Always humor, though. Always humor. Just, you know, it's very serious too. Very, very serious. But there's a lot of backstage. We're like children. We are really become like 8-year-olds, 8 and 9-year-olds.
What language did you talk to Luciano?
Quite often in Italian, but he speaks perfect English.
Perfect.
When I first started singing, nobody really spoke English that much. That's how long ago it was. It was the 70s. So you better learn to speak the language that you were singing in, or that was the predominant language. Now it's everybody speaks English, almost everybody. But I love speaking Italian so much that I enforce it on my Italian colleagues just for my personal joy. It is the language of song, because there are no diphthongs.
Yes.
It's vowel to vowel to vowel to vowel, and it is so much fun to speak. And the trouble is the Italians don't correct you, because if you make a mistake, they think it's sweet and funny. You know, it's like an Italian speaking English. But I walk on the train. I get onto the train. I take off. You know, it's so adorable. We don't want to change it. I remember listening to a record of Miss Tebaldi, who I also worked with. I was lucky enough to work with Renata Tebaldi, and she sang an American song, "If I Loved You," and it was, "If I loved you, time and again I would try to say," you know, it was, who wants to change that? You know, it's too wonderful for words. The French will correct you. They will say no.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah, you know.
So just to give a bit of background, this is Luciano playing Nessun Dorma at the '94 World Cup games.
Okay.
It's with the 3 tenors, but here is by himself.
Okay.
And this is towards the end, the high note. And after we play, I want to ask you to see if you can tell us what he's feeling at that moment.
I'll try.
Yeah. It almost seems to me like when he's singing that note, he's almost going through heaven, or going somewhere else. He's not in that room anymore. He's somewhere else.
He's somewhere else, and he's taking us somewhere else.
Yes.
And that's one of the most special things about Luciano and Placido and all the wonderful tenors, is they take us somewhere. They experience it themselves, of course, but their whole purpose is to take us somewhere. And what I think he's experienced is complete and total elation. Spiritual elation. I think, first of all, no one can sing a high note like that. And it feels fantastic when you are completely coordinated in your voice and everything. It is fantastic. You feel this, oh my gosh, I could fly. 'Cause it doesn't always happen, let me be clear.
Right.
But there's a lot of struggle when things are out of whack. But there's that joy of, that it feels good. It's like hitting a tennis ball right in the middle of the racket and having it go exactly where you want it to go.
Well, it's striving for perfection, right?
It is.
It's probably as close as you can get to it.
I would say Luciano achieved it, but he probably would say he didn't.
But the beautiful thing about it is that, you know, in computers or in science or these kind of things, you have a 1 or a 0, so you'll either get it or you don't get it,
Right.
you know, and the next time is going to be the same. But with him, probably every time he performs,
Right.
it's going to be a little bit different.
Right,
It's going
of
to be
course.
original and
Of
different.
course, yeah, of
And
course.
they both will be almost perfect.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You can sing a little bit habanera?
I'll sing just like
Just
2
a-
notes of
okay.
it. Yeah.
Because we had like Italian, French, and
Okay.
I can move this.
L'amour est un oiseau rebelle que nul ne peut apprivoiser. Ici bien au loin qu'on l'appelle, si lui convient de refuser. Rien n'y fait, menace ou prière, l'un parle bien, l'autre se tait. Ici l'autre que je préfère, elle est bien loin, tu me plais. L'amour, 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 l'amour.
Thank you. In case our audience didn't know what it was, there was habanera from
it's
Carmen.
From Carmen, and it's all about love.
And again, we thank you so much for singing without a piano,
Oh, yes.
without an orchestra, and
an
without a
old,
conductor.
old lady voice. and
Tell us about
composer.
your performances at the White House. Then you performed at the White House. Right?
Oh, the first time was it for President Reagan? No, it was for President Nixon. And they invited the cast from the Kennedy Center to come and sing one of the parts of The Barber of Seville. And it was so much fun because they were using White House furniture for a little mini set. And all the ladies of the Daughters of the American Revolution, the DAR, were very worried that we were using props that we were going to break everything. So it just was very funny. When I sang for President Reagan, it was kind of adorable because I came to the entrance, I think with a cab, and my name wasn't on the list. So I said, maybe could you call the social secretary? And the social secretary went right through to Mrs. Reagan, and she said, "Oh yes, of course, let her in, let her in." So I sang. I can't remember what I sang for President Reagan, but I adored Reagan, and they were so good to me and so kind, and I loved it. It was very, very special. I remember one cute thing. Van Cliburn, one of the most famous American pianists who's been gone a long while now, he and his partner were sneaking from the dining area where we had dinner, sneaking into the pantry to have a cigarette. I saw him, said, "Van."
But it's fantastic to know the love these people have for music,
For
presidents,
music and the
yeah.
arts. And I mean, when I think of what the Kennedys gave to culture in our country, it's extraordinary. And an enormous amount of it is from Mrs. Kennedy. Her restoration of the White House to as close as she could ever come to making it an historic masterpiece. The whole Kennedy Center was President Kennedy. And what a gift to Washington. Washington had one hall before that, Constitution Hall. And I take my grandchildren to Kennedy Center all the time for the opera, for the ballet, for shows. It's so convenient, and I just down on my knees to the Kennedys for giving this to us, for giving it to Washington, and I pray it survives forever.
You mentioned luck plays a big role in someone's career.
Yes.
Please tell us more about that.
It's that same thing that affects every profession, being in the right place at the right time. And very often it's totally accidental. I've had so many guardian angels in my career, I could fill a book. people who have advised me to go a certain way, who have guided me through it, who have taught me, who have put up with me, all of those things. And then, I mean, for my example with the Met, I got a prize in the Met auditions. Then which meant I came back in 3 months to compete for the absolute finals. In that 3 months, there was a walkout at the Met. Many people, I think it was, I don't know if it was the chorus, but people left. And so the Met was closed. It wasn't going to open. And many of the artists who had been there for a number of years were worried about their futures, so they took jobs elsewhere. So there were these openings. And there was an opening for, was a comprimario singer of small parts. So there was an opening just when I was coming on scene. That's luck.
Some would argue that you also make your luck, because if you look at a pattern of the successful people,
Yeah.
they will, like you said, you work hard, you try, you know, you don't give up.
Right.
You fall down, you get right back up.
Well, there is that, absolutely. But my main point is that many great voices and great talents are not discovered because maybe they were born in, I don't know, Portland, Maine, instead of outside of New York City. So they didn't know what was available to them. Many singers don't have huge careers because maybe they sang one wrong role. They sang a role that was too big for them. There's so much that goes into it, which is happenstance. But the thrust of it is the care that one has received. I had one of the great managers of all time, Matthew Epstein, at the beginning of my career, who managed Marilyn Horne and a lot of great names in singing. And he knew just what I should do. I didn't know. He led me to roles that led to other roles. And that was lucky that I got together with him instead of another agent at the time. So it is luck. And I mainly think of it in terms of the many, many talents that haven't had the good fortune that I've had.
And that's why you're working now for this wonderful organization
Yeah,
that gives people this chance.
Just the chance to.
Yeah.
And even if you know, a lot of our graduates from Young Musicians Choral Orchestra don't become musicians. A lot do, but a lot become scientists or engineers. It's just music is such a step for them to, it gives you positive feedback. It gives you determination. It teaches determination. It teaches you patience. It teaches you cooperation. What is an orchestra? But the absolute key to cooperation. Nothing can be done in an orchestra without everyone committing to the same end. I have to tell you, Steve, that one of my dearest, most beloved friends in the opera world was a gal named Zheng Shao. And Zheng, in my heart, had probably the most beautiful mezzo-soprano voice I have ever heard. And I've heard some great mezzo-soprano voices. Not only did she have this incredible voice and incredible musicianship, she was a spirit that exploded around you. Her goodwill, her kindness, her humor. I've never known anyone like this. Anyone that knew her absolutely adored her. And her attitude towards, she did make her own luck. She was going to school in Washington, D.C. and not really progressing the way she wanted to. So she talked her sister into, whose husband was able to affect her moving to Philadelphia to go to the Curtis School because she wanted to study with a certain teacher, to say that she was very ill and needed the care of her sister. So she went through this process to study with the right teacher. And from there, her career took off. She knew what she needed. She made that move. But I agree that being good to other people brings goodness to you. And I had a grandfather whose name was Frederica von Stade, who was one of the kindest, most generous men I've ever met in my life. And I was kind of like his dog. I followed him everywhere when I could, just right by his side on his day. And everything he did was a gesture towards helping someone or making someone's life happier by his visit. It is so the way to go. This sort of self-serving era that we're in now of what I want, what I can get, what I need to do to get this, is not making us happy by any stretch of the imagination. It's making us sadder and more troubled and less confident as human beings. Kindness is at the root of everything in my book. And that's why it's so much a center of what we do with YMCO. It is citizenship is kindness. Religion is kindness. And it's not to be noticed and it's not to be rewarded. Yes. Because a lot of people don't get any rewards.
Yes.
But the process just makes you so much happier.
Yes, I know people like that, and indeed there are not many, but the fact that there are still people like that now, when, like you said, everything gets self-serving, it's so amazing, and observing them, it's inspirational, because you feel that, wow, you know, how does he do it, you know?
The person who is the director of Young Musicians Choral Orchestra is such a man. His name is Geechee Taylor. He gave and gave. He was a graduate of the program. Then he had a career and came back to it to serve as an assistant to Daisy Newman, who then ran the program. His management of this program includes dealing with 65 kids, listening to their practice on iPhones every night, and telling them that they need to clean up their room because he can see their room. He taking care by himself, because he lost his wife, of 2 babies, 3.5 and 2. Will help one of his families move into a new apartment. Will secure an instrument for another young person. This man, I mean, if I had any sway in the Catholic Church, and I am Catholic, he should be sainted. He should be knighted and sainted.
Wow, that's beautiful. Would you have any advice for young people or people, you know, how to be lucky, how to make it so they can succeed?
The best advice I can think of, and I do say this to any of the young singers I work with, is be good to yourself. Do not, artists in general are very critical of themselves and very hard on themselves. And I give them ways to manage that, which is to write down the things you want to achieve, like 3 things, 4 things, 5 things, and repeat it 10 times a day, when you wake up and when you go to sleep, being the most important. I want to really get past the problem I'm having with my high C. That's your desire, your wish, because to a certain extent our minds are computers, and they give us what we put in them. So if we put in incredible negativity and bad thoughts and wishing harm to somebody else, that's what it makes happen. And really, revenge is a very empty vessel. It has no meaning. It gives no satisfaction to anyone. And it's, you know, one of the, I am Catholic, and I went to Mass this Sunday, and the whole sermon was about forgiveness. And You know, it's hard to forgive, but it is so rewarding. It is so much better than the alternative, to not forgive. And part of that is forgiving yourself. Yes, I don't have a voice that can do that. Okay, but I have a voice that can do this, you know, and it will yield the results which make you happy, even if they're not the ones that you dream of. You know, there are lots of people who don't make it, who become maybe a fabulous teacher, maybe just a fabulous mom. That is the most sacred of all professions.
Frederica, we thank you so much for your time.
Oh,
thank you for being
Steve.
here.
Thank you for having me on your beautiful set.
Yes, and your inspiration, I think it's great for everyone.
Oh, well, you know, it's certainly, I've been lucky that it's worked for me.
Thank
I
you.
applaud all your efforts too, in the
you.
name of truth.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching another episode of Bay Area Innovators. If you enjoyed this episode and you know someone who should be on our show, please send us an email at sfbay@epochtimes.com. We would love to hear from you. Thank you and see you next week.